Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Demetra Theophanis, host of the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass education series, Fired Up. The monthly program that we do is free and open to the public, so we hope that you will spread the word. And in addition to free programming, the Art Alliance has a lot of member-only benefits. So Howard is going to put our website in the chat for you to visit. It is also the United Nations International Year of Glass. And so we have a lot of information on our website about exhibits happening worldwide and events that you can find on there as well. A quick note before I introduce our guest today, you can put your questions into the chat, but we are going to be holding all questions until the end of the presentation this time. So please do put your questions in there, but just bear in mind that we will be waiting until the end to get to them. So today we are honored to have with us Dr. Joyce J Scott, a sculptor, performance artist, installation artist, and educator. She is a MacArthur Fellow, received an honorary doctorate from the California College of the Arts, is a recipient of the Smithsonian Visionary Award, among others. But what makes Joyce such an icon goes beyond the intricacy of her sculpture to who she is as a person. Her strength of character, her perspective, her integrity, and her compassion allow her to transcend boundaries and so gracefully navigate important social and political issues in her art. It is truly our honor to welcome Dr. Joyce J Scott with us today. Welcome, Joyce. And I went ahead and unmuted you, so you should be able to talk, but you might have to hit a button on your end. There we go.
Très bien, good.
Yes, and Howard, please go ahead and share screen.
So if it's on me to start, I can say, yeah. I have to apologize. I do believe the Russians did it, or Lowry Sims, who's there. Lowry Sims has 7 doctorates. I've been trying to catch up with her. So far, I'm working with the United Plumbers League and with the Tap Dancers of America to get doctorates from both of those. I only got 2, she got 7. I don't even know how that happened. No museum will give me one, so I have to go to these jackleg places to get my doctorate, but it's going to work out. I'm very sorry for being late. I am in tech hell. I don't know what happened, but I pushed every button I was supposed to. Well, I'm going to start with a song. I'm waiting for young Howard, who's been very wonderful, to share the screen. So I'm just going to start singing while he's putting images up. I always start with a song, you know. I'm not scared of dying and I don't really care. If it's peace you find in dying, well then let my time be near. If it's peace you find in dying, and if dying time is near, then bundle up my coffin, cause it's cold way down there. Troubles are many, they're as deep as a well. I can say there ain't no heaven, and I'll pray there ain't no hell. Ooh. I can say there ain't no heaven, and I'll pray there ain't no hell. But I'll never know by living, only by dying will tell. Give me my freedom for as long as I'll be. All I ask of a living is to have no chains on me. Ooh. All I ask of a living is to have no chains on me. And all I ask of dying is to go naturally. I only want to go naturally. And when I die, and when I'm gone, there'll be one child born in this world to carry on. Hi, everybody. I'm Joyce J Scott, one of the kids carrying on the traditions of the visual and performing arts from the Scott Caldwell family. Howard, is this the very first image? It's not as I remember, but you can see I'm having technical problems today. My parents, the Scotts, are from Durham, Brightleaf, North Carolina, and the Caldwells are from Blackstall, Chester, South Carolina. They came to Maryland during the Great Migration, and I don't mean like birds or something, you know, historically, when African Americans left the South for a better life in the North. Well, I'm up South, that's what Maryland is. We didn't make it all the way to New York or to Chicago. While they were here, my father became a worker at the Bethlehem Steel plant, a crane operator. I asked him, did you ever, you know, drop anything? Like, he said, yes, but I never killed anyone. And my mom worked at many, many jobs here as a chef, as a nanny, as a housekeeper, but she was also an artist. You see my hands in a bowl of beads. You know, I did many things in my life. I started as a textile artist with my mom. My first bead teacher was my mother when I was around 5 years old. Nationally known quilter, Elizabeth Caldwell Talford Scott. So she taught me to sew. And her needle and thread has been my passport throughout my life because everybody sews somewhere. I went to art school. My father wanted me to be, you know, sort of like a social worker or something because he was so afraid I'd be asking him for money my entire life. And I didn't. There, I thought I would be a painter, and my freshman teachers told me to stop painting for the betterment of myself and the entire human race. Next slide, young Howard. So I became a teacher. While I was doing my student teaching, I realized I'd be a 500-pound alcoholic if I stayed within the public school system. So I left. These don't look like any of the slides I remember, although I look gorgeous, don't I? I went to Mexico, to San Miguel Allende. I got my master's degree there. And while I was there, I ignited my desire to travel the world. And that's what I did. So I've been all throughout Central and South America, Africa, Europe, even Asia, all on my quest to not only study beadwork, but to also teach. Why don't we go back to the beginning of the slides, Howard? I think Howard's been drinking. I think I made Howard so upset about being, you know, late that he's probably been drinking a little brown liquor. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but you're all glass artists and you all know what I'm talking about.
Joyce,
okay.
Does this look like
so why don't we go to
slideshow?
slide 3, Howard?
If it's not your slideshow, let me look. And
Yeah, but that's,
right one.
Howard, this is my slideshow, but we should be maybe on slide 3 by now, I think.
This is the third slide. You want this one? You want pictures of you and your mom?
Okay. Is that the, wait. Yeah, that's when the beginning of the slideshow should have been.
Yeah. Sorry.
He's been drinking.
No, I may have.
Anyway.
I've got it. Let me make sure this is your slideshow, okay?
I think this is not my slideshow because
Yeah,
we condensed my slideshow and all those fabulous images of me.
Yeah.
He's been drinking.
I have been
I
drinking.
don't want to take the responsibility for this.
I poured off the wrong
Anyway, let me
PowerPoint.
talk to you about my work. But so I can keep talking, you know, I can sing songs, I can do anything. I even have some balloons. I can do some balloon sculpture.
I will get the right
yes,
show. Give me a second.
That looks like the
Sorry, guys.
Traveling around the world, I kept seeing glass blowing. I went to a lot of workshops. I went to workshops at Penland and Haystack, at the artist in residence at Pilchuck. I did just a lot of traveling, doing other things, but that glass studio was always calling to me. And every time I went in, I'd talk a little bit, get to know the teachers and figure out how I could integrate, there's a word for you, my glass beadwork with the glass art. So sometime, I guess in the early 2000s, I was asked to be an artist in residence at Pilchuck Glass School. I've been using glass a lot, working with glass artists, but Pilchuck allowed me to be in that special place, that heavenly glass place, and work with glass artists, you know, have assistants, and really develop my ideas about that. Then years later, in 2011, after my mom passed, I got the opportunity, a residency in Murano, where I worked at the Baringo Glass Studio. I'm sure a lot of you know that. Now you have to think about me walking into the glass studio. Ah, voila. Thank you, Big Howard.
Sorry.
So,
Big-
okay, so here I am in the studio working. And I tried to replicate that in Italy. Just wait for me to say next, Howard.
Okay.
So let's go back to the very first one. Thank you. I tried to replicate that in Italy. I took beads with me. I would work while they were blowing glass with me. And you know, I walked in and I was fabulous. I was wearing velvet and a big red wig. And I was singing, because they like opera. And I kept showing them what I wanted to do with beadwork. And they'd say, no, que se fa, it's not going to happen. No. Watch. Next slide. Well, I told you that my mother taught me how to sew, but you know, with beads, but all of her work with beads was embroidery. In 1976, the bicentennial, I went back to Haystack Mountains. Don't move until I ask you to, Howard. So go back to that one, yes. I went back to Haystack Mountain School of Crafts and I learned the peyote stitch or diagonal weaving from an indigenous woman. It is a sacred stitch for them. And that opened up beadwork for me. Now, remember, I'm working with little glass orbs. This allows me to count. It's really like pointillism. And I did everything in the beginning. I threw in all the materials I could next. And I realized that I really didn't understand about peyote stitch. So I took out all the extraneous materials and I put in just beadworking, counting, learning how to shape, next. And that kind of jewelry work was also something that allowed me to take care of myself as well as learning the technique of beading. Some of my beadwork necklaces are giant pictorials. Most of them are allegorical or they tell stories. I make up something. I call them graphic novels or fairy tales next. But it's all about evolving beadwork past what has been seen. This is some of my latest work for an exhibition that's going to be traveling, sponsored by Mobilia Gallery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is where I'm even messing around with dimensionality and beadwork, abstraction, layering sculpturally next. I don't believe that because it's jewelry, then it's not as good as, or it's a handicraft or it's decorative. I believe I have the same impulse in making this jewelry that I do when I'm doing printmaking or when I am making a piece of sculpture. I like to tackle odd things with jewelry, like how am I going to make this work on the body without it having a clasp? So I had to weight it in the back. And how do I use imagery that's not seen a great deal on jewelry? How do I make it festive? How do I make it work? Now that goes really back to my mom and the family members on her side who made a way where there was no way. You use materials that you found or that you had to develop in your kitchen or in your magical workshop next. That all worked for me in my travels because I got to infiltrate, to insinuate all kinds of things. Well, I taught you about doing glass. I was in San Francisco getting my second doctorate, Lowry, my second doctorate at CalArts. And I got to meet Nate Watson via another friend. And he took me to his studio downtown, the one glass studio that's still working in the city of San Francisco. Notice he's an African-American glass artist. There's a burgeoning number of them, but we are still very low in the count of international glass artists. Nate and I are in his studio with a bunch of senior citizens playing with adding my beadwork to glass. Next, so what we do is I make a beaded piece, or maybe I'll mix my beaded piece with frit and Muranos. I put them on the marver. Next, he picks them up, and he has to pick them up really fast. You know, he rolls them on the bubble. They're on a synthetic thread. Here I am working with Nate, talking to him about how I want to place those beaded pieces on the bubble. Next. And then he rolls them up. They have to be on synthetic thread because natural thread will burn much too rapidly. That red figure is my beadwork that's been gathered on the glass. It changes its form as he makes it larger, and as he twists around. Forward, please, Nate. Next. Now, why am I even doing this, you're saying? Well, because, you know, I'm antsy. I'm not satisfied with almost anything. This is a large beaded piece and mosaic piece I did for an egg show next in New York. So I'm putting broken glass down, and I'm also fusing that and mixing that with my beadwork. I'm not comfortable or satisfied next with doing one thing. I want my work to invigorate, and I want my work to be representative of what I've seen all around the world. This is before it has that final glassy finish on it. So I've also done mosaics in our city park on the ground and on the wall. So I know what mosaic work means. So why can't I put anything else I want into it? Next, this idea about rules, you know. I'm a user. I mean, I use them. I'm doing the peyote stitch, so that's math. I don't know how many rules you can have, but there's something about being able to add it with different materials. Next. I'm telling you, folks, I'm trying to catch up. I got very nervous. I got so nervous that I wouldn't be able to do this show. But now I'm back. A lot of my work is storytelling. My mom said that when she came from the South and started working in homes, the most hurtful thing for her would be to raise a child from a baby. Here she is as a platinum woman, not a silver or gold woman, but a platinum woman to this baby. She is everything to him. And then he starts to call her racist names. Now, why is that happening? He's 4. He's not at the club dancing with friends. It's something that's happening within the home. It's something that's being sneaked on him by the very people that she's taking care of. Next. So I did a lot of weaving in my life and fiber work. So I was deciding on how I could add all of that with my beadwork as a storytelling tool and mix all of those materials together. For a long time, I've been working on the trauma that's happening in around 6 countries in Africa about the slaughter of African albinos. How do you look at someone who looks exactly the same as you, but they're a different skin tone, and decide that they're not human? Ooh, does that feel familiar? They flay people, they cut off their arms and legs. So I started doing pieces about it. This is a young boy who's been flayed and been castrated. Now, this could fit in your hand so you can really peruse it. I want you to know that I try never to make my craftsmanship secondary to the context or the theme. I'm always working to be a superlative, the next step bead artist, next. And because bead is such an ancient material because bead work is such a very ancient technique. I mean, that's what you find in tombs. I try to honor it while I'm working. I usually do series. I start with one piece and I think I'm doing fine, but there's so much more to say. This is from a series called Day After Rape. You know, that's what happens during war. When people take over cities, when men take over cities, then they abuse women. I'm sorry, that's the truth. So this is about Darfur and Africa. The guy with the red devil is the rapist, but it's not only in places like Africa. In Bosnia, women were also assaulted, and that's what the face of that woman is. Next. This is in the mid, or really the beginning of, I think, the 2000s. The series from The Day After Rape in Darfur is when women are in camps and they have to go out and gather water. They take their children with them. Sometimes they're murdered. Sometimes their bodies are put in strange configurations. Next. These are all very tiny and they're meant to be held in your hand and to look at and to feel, like tokens or reliquaries. I also like to dress sculpture or figures from other cultures. This is an Nkisi, a power figure, a figure that you bring offerings to, a figure that looks after you. And I thought I would dress it. Now we do that in the West all the time. You know, you'll go into a Catholic church, there'll be a Satan, she's in a fabulous velvet dress with beadwork, and there are all kinds of prayer cards and tokens and milagros and well, things all around the bottom of her. Well, that's what I've done with this. I was in Prospect 2 in New Orleans in 2011, I believe, working at Inferno Glass, which is one of the studios, and we made penises, fingers, and eyes. We fused my glass faces, and I built this garment around this figure. Next. I, not being a glass artist, but an artist who employs glass, don't always, well, I think I'm respectful. I just don't have the same kind of I make it all from the very beginning feeling. This is another one of those figures that I've dressed. Those beads were yellow, but I went back and used my mom's needle and thread and sewed yarn into it to make those faces. So I'm always trying to evolve as an artist. Next, I just am not comfortable doing the same thing over and over again. You know, beadwork is fabulous, but it can be very boring if you're doing the same thing. So how do I ignite it? This is a large piece for an exhibition that Lowry Sims and Patterson Sims, the two unlikely twin curators, curated of my work at Grounds for Sculpture in New Jersey, I think around 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. This is a large Harriet Tubman. The name of the show was Harriet Tubman and Other Truths. And this is a large beaded Harriet Tubman as Buddha. Now, when I use Buddha a lot in my work, because I like the idea that he was a guy who didn't aspire, didn't become God. He just evolved into like this really smart person who wanted to share all this knowledge with you. Wow. Next. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be Buddhic. Buddhifical. Well, I'm difficult all the time, but that's a whole other story. This is also from the show. It's a large wall hanging that's around 41 inches long of Harriet Tubman, her going from the daytime all the way into night as she was bringing people to freedom. These are really small beads made into a really large wall hanging. When I talk to you about my trying to develop things, I can't think any reason why I'm supposed to be one of those bead workers, a mediocre or okay bead worker. I'm the one. That is what I thrive for in my artwork. I'm always pushing myself to develop far past what I thought I could be. When I go, I want like people yelling, did you see that beaded coffin? That woman right there, that Joyce right there. So I'm just going to keep working. And when I talk to younger artists, that's what I keep saying. Never stop. Next. Because I confound myself sometimes. Now you're saying, why is she showing us all of these beads? Firstly, they're glass. This is a glass group. Next, but I also am showing you how I'm taking something that's considered to be a lowly component. But to make a glass bead, go back, please, Howard. To make a glass bead is a whole thing. In the old days, you blow them, you pull them, or somebody would lamp work them and they cut them and they polish them. Now they have big machines that they won't let me look at in factories. But you know, there's a lot of extruding going on, but they still have to be finished and made into the same micro. This thing is very deep. So I honor this age-old tradition by making stories like this. This is also around 36, maybe 40 inches long and maybe 30 some inches wide. It's called the Blue Baby Book. What I do is I look at my artwork. If it doesn't sell, or if I don't think it's working, I cut it up and mix it up again. So this is a couple of art pieces that all became one large wall work. Next, I've decided that these must be graphic novels because I was told they were graphic novels. This next piece is a large wall hanging that I made last year during COVID. And I don't always understand what the stories are about, but I know they're big storytelling pieces. I like the idea that light can travel through them, the old art terminology of negative and positive space, how I have to balance out and work tonally and with color. Next. But all of my work, as you saw with the nanny pieces, are not flat. A lot of my work is sculptural. When I was in Murano working, I had a lamp worker working for me, and he made just components, parts for me. Then I came back and working with Tim McFadden's studio here in Baltimore. I used all the arms and legs up and I got other arms and legs. And so sometimes I just make things because I think they're beautiful, they're pretty, and I like to look at them. And also they sell well. So this is a small black figure made out of lamp work glass, flame work glass, and beadwork. That's something I also do badly. Next. So my sculpture is another way of seeing for me. Sometimes I buy just industrial stuff. I was going to Penland to work. I stopped in Durham to see my dad. We went through the mountains and I stopped at a secondhand store, and there was this bottle, a liquor bottle of a man holding a gun. And that's the first time I understand what a shot of liquor meant, because you would put the barrel in your mouth after it was filled with liquor and drink. Think about how many head accidents happen through that. But this headshot is about young urban boys who are killed or killed with guns. It's a larger piece. Now, I could have made that face incredibly accurate. By that, I mean, the eyes would be balanced and the mouth would be beautiful to look at. But what would you look like if you were just shot in the head? Next, I want people to look at my work and go, oh. I want them to go, oh, and I also want them to go, oh. I want to be someone who elicits a variety of reactions from you. So this one I did in Murano, and I can tell you, working with 3, sometimes 4 classically trained Italian men of a certain age. They're like, you want me to do what? She's having a baby and you have to pull her out of her vajayjay. What? It was wonderful for me. If you look at the head, this is also a very large work. So I got to make jokes, and we played with what a woman's body looks like and the pain that she's feeling. The 2 legs were made separately and glued on in the coal shop. Next, they got into, after working with me at 2 different residencies, into the lyricism, the wit, and the tragedy in my work. You see this turquoise kind of color, that's my beadwork that's been fused on the work, and then I made a snake around her neck. This is a large translucent work, so when people are passing around it, you see their bodies and their shadows moving through it. And you can light it in so many different ways, where a shadow falls or where she just glistens. Next. I do a lot of figurative work because I like, working with human bodies. The last time I was in Murano, I did 4 Buddhas. Of course, they said, "Ma Buddha, que se fa Buddha?" And I'm like, "You're not the boss of me. I can do," I really didn't say that, but I also said, like, as an artist, anything is available to me to use. So I did 4 Buddhas, which represent the 4 seasons, the 4 time zones, you name it. This represents winter. And that beaded face is my beadwork that's been fused or gathered onto Buddha's head. Now, the first time I did that with them, I wasn't always successful. And, they lorded that over me. Okay, all right, okay. So I went home and I was teaching a class at Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, and I asked my assistant, where can I get old Italian beads that would be chemically compatible with the Italian beads of the past? So when I went back the second time, my kids said, and I did that kind of stuff. They loved it. I love it too, because I'm a fool. Anyway, this time, the majority of the beads didn't pop off the surface or crack. They adhered to the surface because they hadn't changed their chemical, recipe very much. And these were antique Murano beads. So this represents Buddha, and the clouds and the coldness of the figure represents the winter. Next. I really like playing with opacity and translucency, and of course, glass is where you do it. This represents spring and summer, this Buddha. I said to my flame worker, I want you to make me a black figure and I want to set it on fire. So my big job was to make this figure a flame. And on the inside of this hollow body, I placed a reaching hand. And the face is more of my beadwork that's been fused. This is owned by the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. Next, I like the idea that people look at the work, try to figure out how I make it, why I'd have the audacity to do it, and then want to put it in their home so they might peruse on that. This is the summer, winter, spring. This is one of the Buddhas. It's a very large beaded face. The small body is made out of clay beads, so it's talking about the earth. Next, you see on the leg, there's a boy's face. So I said to Beringo, that's the Adriano, the person who owns the studio, I call him Baron Negro just to get in trouble, I said, go get me some, indelible ink pens. They're good. I'm like, just go. So while he was gone, I was drawing all over it. And when he came back, he's like, I can't leave you for a minute. You're drawing. I said, I know. So this is of a young man. You can see the beaded large body of small, tiny clay beads. Next. And on the back of this figure is the face of that same boy in gold leaf. You could also see the red booted face of the beadwork. And some of these pieces can be very large, or they're not so large, but by the time they blow it, enhance it, shape it, it gets large in color. And I was very lucky because those red and black beads were really compatible with that glass. So it embraced the glass beautifully. I personally like the risk because sometimes it doesn't work, it cracks off, it breaks, and then I take the pieces and make it into something else. Next. I'm moving fast, guys. I'm trying to move fast. Another piece from Italy. So we make it work. I lay out all the glass rods, Muranos. We play with it. Then I bring it home and add the beadwork. You can see a little bit of that influence of Richard Jolly. I know you know him. I give him great homage. I stack sometimes heads on top of heads like he does, but not to copy him. But most of the time I'll stack a head on top or on it somewhere, because that allows me to start the next figure. And I make the whole beaded and glass body and not have to worry about adding how to adhere the body to the glass because it's already there. Next. It's probably another one of those figures from Italy. I seldom just do them on their own. It's a beadwork, close up, you see, like I did the eyes and the nose and the lips some other place. I did them and I worked with a flame worker. So you see, then I went back and glued them on, and there's that head was made for me by, I think, when I was with Paul Stankard working in Finland, and he showed me how to do, these big things out of glass and out of the borosilicate. Next. So I really like playing with glass myself, but I also am very afraid of fire and I like to melt stuff. So it's not a smart thing for me to do. So that brings in the idea of collaboration. When you collaborate with somebody, you have to submit to what they do, which doesn't usually squelch me. It broadens my ideas about how I can evolve as an artist. Here's another piece. Next. And this has a twin that I'm working on now with a glass face and a body. Another piece from Murano, this yellow person, it has flame work guns coming out of the tummy and it's holding yellow snakes. Next. I don't always think the work is the most balanced, the most graceful, but it's answering the questions I asked it. So this is a great example of what I'm talking about, stacking heads on heads. When I stacked the little head on the top, it allowed me to build a whole body and cloak off of it without having to worry about how I was going to adhere it. Also, this is my mosaicing again. So that base is my beadwork and glass and probably a few other things mosaiced into the base. I find that to be just luscious. And I'm also playing like a child. Next. One of the things about the glass workers in Murano, if it isn't exactly what they think is it, they want to throw it away, but I'm like, absolutely not. I know what I'll do with it. So I had this brown figure, and the great thing about his head is that they rolled his head and frit for hair. Some of it came off, which allowed me to sew into it and to glue things to the head and then grow off of it. This piece is a combination of all kinds of stuff, things I'd cast. The boat on the top is something that I blew somewhere, was blown for me in Maryland or somewhere else. I asked my artist here, we did drawings. We did all this copious amount of discussion and marking about where he would glue these pieces so I could come back. I started working on things. And of course, they all slid on the piece. I guess he didn't tape them down. So they were in another place and I had to do a different kind of juxtaposition with the beadwork, and it always works out because it pushes me to do something different. Next. Sometimes I'm also finding things that I started in the studio and can rejig, can rework for the piece. It's like putting together, different chapters of a book or stories, and you didn't even know what the second part was going to be until you found it. And I'm not sure I'm finished with this piece yet. African figure, flame work, glass work, bead work. On the back is a fused piece. I I used to work with a teacher, and instead of her paying me, she let me do fusing of glass. In the old days, when you could get paradise paint, I still have a tad left, I would paint on the glass, and we fused them together and we layered them. And so there'd be painted pieces, sometimes metal fused in, and then I glue it on the work. These are probably around 30 inches tall. Next. I find that sometimes when I'm making a work, that it says all these different things to me, and they're not always the sweetest or the nice, and sometimes they're very graphic. So this is a woman who's pregnant. When he blew it, he fused in a flamework embryo. You see that eye. So I beaded her face and her dress, and the monolith she's standing on has genitalia and people's faces and people laughing and two figures on the side. I don't exactly know what this is about, but I knew that the handling of it and the making of it was so luscious and successful for me that it was right. Next. The next one that I think he's showing you is a piece from something I did at Tulane University, which was an 11-foot long Buddha. This is also me working, not Buddha, woman, me working at the Inferno Glass Studio, and it's a woman lynching a tree. I have no idea what Howard is doing. Howard, go back to the woman in the tree.
I think, is this not the woman in the tree?
This
may be a grounds for sculpture.
Yes, this is the woman in the tree. No, this is at Tulane, but another image from me popped on. That's why I asked you to go back to this.
Okay.
So this is at Tulane in 2011. We worked on these branches at Inferno. I have no idea why she's lynching a tree, except I know it's about lynching and her, I think, recouping power. So instead of the tree being used to lynch her, she reverses it. I made this really large beaded figure, and the entire back is open so that I could embrace a limb and sew it on. Next. This was in a high tree, and people would kind of happenstance upon it and then try to figure out what it was about. I think the school got some very good, but also some very bad things. Receptions from people with me doing this in the tree. Next.
Which
Okay,
slide?
guys, we're coming to what I did. This is right. I think this is right, yes. Or did we miss any in between, Howard? Or was this the very next slide?
This is the next slide with,
I think this is right.
yeah, looks like your mom, maybe.
Perfect, I see it. No, it's not my mom, but thank you, Howard. She was pretty. During COVID or the lockdown or the pandemic or the drunken foray, whatever you want to call it, I started working on these large pieces about the slaughter of African albinos again. This piece is, I think, 41 inches tall. It's done with various size beads. When you look at her dress, especially on the back, you can see that the yellow has different tonality. The bright colored beads are bright colored beads, but where the yellow beads look like green or gray is where I've sewn into the transparent, translucent bead with different color yarns so that I could tonally draw on the work. This is the market lady. She's all dressed up. She's got her son next, and they're going to the market. But they're going to the market to sell this boy who's been cut up. I did a lot to make this boy as realistic as possible. The slide is a little wonky because I did it. I mean, I spread it out longer than it should. But you see faces and hands and feet. His mouth is swollen because he's been beaten. A little blood, a little this, a little that, because many times that is what happens. The baby is purchased, the child is purchased. I'm presenting this to viewers so that, and in hopefully one of the most well-fashioned, beautiful ways that I can, so we can take some time and think about who we are as humans. Because, you know, that's what a lot of work does. It just makes you introspect. That may not be grammatically correct. Stop yelling, Lowry, but I used it anyway. Next. And then I believe the next one is the red monkey. This is also a really large piece. And this piece that you're looking at, they're like a tour de force to me. A really culmination of a lot of the techniques that I developed and that I worked on and thematically worked on. So here she is, I'm pinning her together in process. And I wanted you to see that. I made the, you know, I went online and I looked at pictures so the feet could really look like monkey feet, and that I could use these really luscious red beads next to create a savior. What she is a monkey who is a trickster figure and a jester figure. You know how they always show you like monkeys in India and Thailand and Sri Lanka, where they are around shrines and they're always stealing food and taking people's purses and stuff, where they're rascals. But they also are our closest relative, and they are very good moms. Some of them have taken babies to care for them. Certainly they take small animals and care for them. So here, this monkey trickster has saved 2 albino children and is caring for them. The one on the shoulder has been injured. The other one is just safe under its arm. And on his back are the names of the countries that traffic in this disaster: Burundi, Tanzania, Malawi, South Africa, 1 or 2 more. I chose these luscious red beads because they're the color of blood, which is also the color of life and like a river of life. But because they're so next, hopefully magnificent, you have to go to them and stare at them and then realize what's happening. On the head are small heads that are telling you what's going on. Yes. This is another piece that I made. This is not an albino piece. This is a piece called The Teapot Lady. And this is, I think, 31 inches tall. So I made this wonderful teapot with a beaded base, sent it to Mobilia. It was broken. You know how you see pictures of people at FedEx throwing it back? Okay, so that got broken. When it came back, I couldn't make the base work. So I decided to make an entire figure as the base. And I did a lot of work on the figures popping out of this woman. I have no idea what this means. I know the teapot is about lovers. Maybe these are lovers trying to get to the teapot. I just know I had a lot of fun doing it and a lot of fun making the figures. And even though I've been doing beadwork for over 60 years, I literally learn something new every time I do it. Either about repair, about counting. I am still learning. That's the other thing I tell my students: stay available to learn. Stay available to evolve. This is very important to me. And I like the idea that I would sit down and make all of those braids, because you know she's a sister. And her son is next to her, so people don't think that she's just a strange truncated person. No, I'm just only showing like maybe half the body. I also am not a bead snob. I'm saying this to glass people, so I'll probably hear about it from you. But this is a mixture of glass, probably metal, and plastic beads. It's all from the earth. Next, we're coming to the end, folks. I know what you're saying. Not only was she late, that's a stereotype right there, But this is the longest slideshow I've ever had to see without 40 pounds of glass. Next, Howard. Maybe I'll call him Howie. That'll do a thing. Is that Timothy Tateman? Yeah, it is. I know it's him because he's got a halo on his head.
That's me, baby.
So the Grounds for Sculpture show. Yep, it's you. I can tell he's got a halo on his head. We'll talk about that later. Do not go back, please. Go back, Howard, please. The two curators I told you about, Patterson and Lowry Sims, talked with people at Grounds for Sculpture, and they all said, you can do whatever you want. It's a silly thing to say to me. Go back to the last slide, please, Howard. So I said, I want to make thank you. I want to make a Harriet Tubman who's 10 feet tall, and I want to make one that's 15 feet tall. And they said, what? And I said, too late. So I want you to know that the curators worked with me throughout it. Lowry yelled about having to, maybe sand a little or so. Oh, she's such a diva, but that's a whole other story. Go back to the other slide, please, Howard. The slide before is the 10-foot slide. That's
one?
Harriet. The slide before this, please.
Teapot lady.
That slide is, excuse me, what?
So this slide is like a large Harriet
Nope,
Tubman
it's the Harriet.
surrounded by a beautiful ring.
The
No,
one that I'm looking at is the T. That's it. Leave that one right there, please. That one right there. This is a 10 feet Harriet. I had to hire a young guy to do all the digital drawings. Then they cast it in the studio. I went there and, we filed it down and we did all kinds of things, and they coated it in this metallic color, and we painted a little bit. They're mirrors. She's holding a staff, which is a veve or a power kind of staff that's covered in beadwork. And she's got a very large gun, which I did in the studio with some of the people who worked there, as well as the curators and other friends. She's standing on quilts. Quilts are really important during the time of the Underground Railroad, because they were used as signposts to tell people about yes, safety, and no, go on. They were also used to swaddle people, to keep them warm. And in the very back, you'll see this kind of barely visible figure. That's that 11-foot figure again that I'm using. Excuse me. I use it over and over again. And here she represents a hanked. And a hanked is a ghost. And everybody thinks that your ghost could be something negative. Excuse me. Sometimes ghosts shepherd you home. My mom would say when they would leave the cotton fields, they go across the lake or the pond because ghosts can't pass the pond. And you'd see them passing by bottle trees. And the bottle trees originally were made for hanks because they go up into the bottle and they get confused and couldn't get out. So that's why you see them festooned in backyards or in walkways. There are also glass sculptures and heads hanging from these trees that you can't see, unfortunately. Next. So they also said, you sure you want a 15-foot? I want a 15-foot Harriet form that we can sculpt. I got on a cherry picker. This was wonderful. And I want her to disappear. I want her to pass, just like her memory did. So we made this Harriet Tubman. I decided to attach beadwork to her and to do graffiti. So she's a hip hop Harriet, I guess. The graffiti or the writing is actually a letter that Frederick Douglass wrote to Harriet Tubman when she asked him to talk about her book. And he said to her, and this is a paraphrase, "Are you kidding? Of course I'll do it. I'm writing about it. You're actually out there saving people." Next, She's surrounded by the plants that she would have passed through from South Carolina up to Maryland, New York, even as far as Canada. And it took her a long time to fall apart. As she would decay, the beadwork would fall off and they'd collect it for me. And at the end, there was just the vestige. She was painted colors. There was just the vestige of her figure and some of the script left. She also was holding a 10-foot resin gun that was filled with glass and other kinds of collected things. It was important to me that there was something that lasted, that would change in the memory of the viewer, and that talked about this superheroine. She was a spy, guys, and also talked about the demise of these giant statues that we have going all around now because they're about the Confederacy. Next. This is not the largest piece that I've done, but I have done a lot of outside work. I didn't really think about it until I started doing these Zoom calls about just how much next outside work I've done. This is Harriet before she is festooned. Once again, it's somebody working with me. Yes, go to the next one, please, Howard. This is a piece that's over 15 feet. This one, yes. Over 15 feet tall at the Spoleto Music Festival years ago. Next. Sometimes I'll be asked to do installations places that don't last for a long period of time. This is from my first retrospective at the Baltimore Museum of Art. The piece on the left, I hope it's your left, is a waterfall that's made out of cast and blown glass, and that pools at the bottom on the floor with cast of Harriet Tubman. I believe Harriet Tubman, my mother, would have been great friends. They would have been on the railroad together. My mom was like Harriet Tubman, dark skin, not 5 feet tall, a go-getter, somebody who believed in justice. And here's a picture, a photograph of the waterfall in the back. There's the thinker. Now, the thinker used to be on the front when I was very young. My mother would bring me to the museum. Be on the outside, not like all the kids would climb on him, look at him, kiss him, look for his genitalia. He didn't have any. And play. They brought him in, and I decided to put this little boy who was so saturated with stereotypes and horrible words that they popped out of him. So watermelons and his bones are popping out of him, and the word nigger, spick, kike, and yid, they're written all over it. Coon, chink, they're written in beads all over his body, and he's all beadwork. Now, let me say that when I was installing this in the museum, the teachers were like, what is this? I don't know. And all the younger kids knew what it was about immediately. Next. I was asked to do an installation in one of the art sites in Maryland, and it had, you know, a little forest, a little park around it. And when we were discussing it, they said, you know, as I was asking for materials, well, you know, we have these trees, we really don't like them. They move in, they take over. Nobody likes what their flowers are like. Nobody likes their colors. We're going to cut them down. And I thought, does that sound familiar? So I said, give me some of those trees. And I and my assistants tricked them up. We replanted them so that when people were walking through the park, they'd happenstance on these glowing kind of personalities, representing that it's all right to be whoever and whatever you are. Next. We're almost at the end, folks. This is water, no matter what Demetria said. I was the first artist in residence at Motor House, which is an art institution in Baltimore. So not only did I do my work there, I allowed people to come in and sometimes work. And this is a piece for a thesis at the Maryland Institute College of Art for an artist in their curatorial studies department. She did a large building that she owned. She did the outside of it. And so she and other people, kids even, came and made these mosaics. I did some mosaics. She has a giant painting as well as the mosaics on the outside. Next. Next. This is my mom, the lady I've been talking about. Elizabeth Caldwell Talford Scott on the outside of my house. And look, you can see my door even has beadwork. Go back, please. Thank you. Has beadwork and glass on it. My mom is seminal in my life because she taught me all kinds of things. When I say she was a sharecropper, I mean a sharecropper. They really picked cotton from the beginning to the end of the day. She went to the 6th grade in a one-room schoolhouse. She said that all the kids, no matter what color, played in front of the schoolhouse, but when they went in, there was a sheet that separated them by ethnicity. My parents really bemoaned the fact that they didn't have an academic education. They had me, and oh my goodness, I loved school. And they did their best to keep me in school and keep me actualized and activated. Next. So I stayed, of course, with my mom to the end of her life. And she took 14 years to pass away with dementia. I'm sorry that image isn't higher. So I'm going to end with this song because this is something that my mom always taught me. You know, I used to do street ministry with my godparents who were preachers. They say I got them extra money because I could play the tambourine and sing really well. There's this song about having a bright light. I think we all have them. To not put it under a bushel, to glow and shine. And that's what I'm going to sing. You all know it. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. My mom said, let your light shine. Don't hide it under a bushel. Theirs were hidden because of who they were, their lack of education, their ethnicity, the jobs they did. But she said, let it shine. My parents ate crap so that I should have sugar, so I'm not going to be denied. I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, everybody, you got one. I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Ooh. Let it shine. Thank you. I'm done. Questions, comments? Nice comments.
Thank you so much. That was,
I got.
you can't hear the applause, but I see people applauding. We did have some.
I can see these guys.
We do have some questions that came in through the chat while you were talking, so we'll cover those first. Let's see here. So someone wanted to know, they asked if you could please describe your thoughts behind gunshot.
I live in a really challenged neighborhood in Baltimore. I live in the inner city. Guys, I must be tireder than I think because I'm having trouble talking. And anybody knows me knows I have no trouble talking. I live on a block that has I heard that laugh. I live on a block that has drug sales. And I have heard gunshots. And throughout our city, young men and women, now older, a 70-year-old woman was just shot the other day, are losing their lives because of the proliferation and the use of guns. I am talking specifically about young African-American men because that's my demographic, in the sense that they would be my children. And how the loss of any life through violence is a tragedy. I believe better out than in. So I do the best therapy in the world by talking about what bothers me, instead of sitting home, eating cinnamon rolls, which I love, and drinking a really good martini. I just get it out of me by making the artwork. Another question?
Had another question. Someone interested in your collaborations that you do and how you're able to communicate with the people that are blowing the glass for your work so that it's really reflecting your style.
I slap them. I slap the hell out. You don't do what I want, I just beat the hell out of you. That's the lie. I'm not joking. I sang a lot to the guys in Murano. I just break into a song, but when I warm my voice up, I have a coloratura voice. I'd just be singing and they'd be like, okay. But, and it's the truth. But I do what I was taught to do by glass artists. You take in drawings, you show them those, maybe images. The floors are usually concrete, so you have chalk and you draw all over the floor. A lot of times you draw on the floor, so they, while it's on the pipe, they can place it on it for size and shape. As much as handwork as I can do, like if I'm going to use color or frit or milleflori, whatever, I lay them out and we talk about it. I generally prize the people that I am collaborating with because, firstly, I'm depending upon them, but they come in with as much as I know. Of course, they know a lot more about glass. And also those who aren't sweet to me, then it becomes my job to turn them into my friends. So, but I literally do what I was taught to do in a glass studio, which is to come prepared with the work. And I always try to come prepared. So those faces that you saw, although I would keep making things as I thought, well, I could do squiggles on this piece. I came with all of my faces prepared so that they could look at them and we could talk about how to pick them up and how big the bubble would be and how many times it'd have to go into the glory hole, so whether it would melt or whether it would be flat or keep some of its shapes. Because there's there are technical things with glass blowing and glass work that everybody should know when they're asking somebody to work with them. And that's how I do it. And let me say that although I know there are people who think what I make is shite, how do I know that? Because they've said it in some ways. This is what would happen in a studio. If someone they thought that it was not worth doing, they'd say, this doesn't look very good. Or, yeah, we've done this 1,000 times before. They never said no. They'd say, okay, let's go. Let's go and make this crap right now. And that for me was good, because when they would say like that beadwork's not going to work, they would be overwhelmed by the outcome. And then they'd say to me, if we did this with that, and I'd say, no, I'm not speaking to you because you were mean to me, you bastard. We're all adults, so I just cussed. But most of the time it would be like, yeah, let's not try that on this one. Let's start a whole new one and do. So the collaboration would grow because I literally respect those that I work with. And let me say, if I've been with someone that I feel is belittling me or just isn't interested in what I do, because that's generally it. They're just not interested. Then I don't work with them again. And that's not that you dislike someone. They just don't have the time to give you.
Right.
I've also had people say, you know what? I have one person that I worked with for years, actually. And I came to him with a project. And I said, I'm coming to you with a project because you are the major domo. And I like a good Italian girl, I must come to you first. You Dulce and ask you, you know? And he said, honestly, I don't want to do it. He said, I'm at a time in my life now where I do what I want to do. And this work I don't want to do. And I said, I got it. I understand. Then I set his house on fire. Is that my outside voice?
So, all right. Well, we have a question also about your beaded sculptures. Someone wondering, are you putting anything inside to actually provide the structural support, or is it the beadwork alone that is supporting the piece?
The really small pieces are self-supporting. And like for the jewelry that you see, they're basically self-supporting because of the way I bead, the way that I increase and decrease, and the fibers that I use make them sturdy enough to be self-supporting. And I like that because that makes them translucent. So you can really, during exhibition, employ light coming through them, casting shadows, because light can travel through them. Beadwork becomes fabric as it gets larger. Then it can't support itself. So there's usually like the market woman, the teapot lady. She had a big wooden base under her. Someone gave me a wooden head sculpture, and it weighs a ton. I'm so sorry for the next person who picks it up, but it was the perfect base for me to work. I sometimes though will make structural bases that are like loops and forms that still help the piece to be translucent. But some of the super large pieces, unless I can drape them on something like the body around the tree, have to have some kind of armature in them.
All right, and a question from Valerie asking, you have already innovated in so many ways. What have you not yet done that you're thinking of doing?
I thought I would volunteer for Russia. I don't walk so well, but I know I could make a slamming Molotov cocktail. I'm talking about the kinds you drink. So I could have a little bar over there. You know how people feel about Black women in bars, and I could be singing in a bar, Molotov cocktail. No, that's not what you mean, is it? You know, I just keep going. That mosaic work that I did earlier, I'd like to do larger pieces of those, mixing that. The work that I did, I'm trying to figure out a good example. The market lady with the albinos on her head. You remember how her dress was tonally mixing with the threads? So I'm figuring out how to paint with threads and translucent beadwork, and then go about working on a piece. I'm going to start working on a piece now doing that. I want to keep working on beadwork that is astounding. I want to make jewelry that is astounding. I want people, because if I create it properly, then it doesn't weigh too much. The balance is right, but it could be all over you. I like to do that because with jewelry, you are including the wearer in whatever skullduggery you're in, that the person who's got it on now is a part of it. So if I'm writing about politics, although I say that beauty is one of the most political things you can do to luxuriate in beauty and allow people to be part of that with you too, because that's a real form of release. But it allows people to have a conversation beyond themselves about the work. And it's a way of as we say in my neighborhood, conversating about the work that doesn't happen when it's on a wall or in a vitrine by itself. You know, I didn't show you all kinds of things. I did theater for years. I'm still singing. And I was still, the other thing, I wrote a book about, it's funny, it's right here too, and I didn't mean that. It's called Fearless Beadwork, Handwritings and Drawings from Hell, that I did in 1994. And I've been talking with my gallerist, Amy Raish, and we're talking about, keep talking about doing a graphic novel that's also a how-to bead book. Because from those 20 years, I've really evolved and developed a variety of techniques and overlap that I would like to leave. Not doing this. I taught for years and I don't teach anymore. I also want to say that Mobilia Gallery is putting together a traveling show that's basically jewelry that'll open next year. And then I'm having a retrospective, my second retrospective, my 50-year retrospective at the Baltimore Museum of Art in 2024. And I hope to do some installations, and I'm combining crochet, beadwork, and other stuff together to make really large pieces.
Oh.
As long as I have my abilities, I'm going to be concocting new stuff. Why else am I here? I talked a little bit about that earlier, but I want to say it over and over again. As an artist, I'm here to be the one. Now, there are people who on like the egotism scale are like, who does she think she is? How dare she? If not me, then who? And why not me? I want to run life down. If I have a grave, I want it to be motion activated. And when you get up on me, I wanted to go, damn, girl. I really want to live this life. And so involved in, and I also do, you know, community work with friends. So we have a group that does Christmas work with families. And I mean, I do all kinds of things. I want to stay alive and alert. But I think it's incredibly important for me to go beyond my own personal expectations. Because if not, I'm just, you know, here making more necklaces. I want the magical one. I want to like make an entire beaded suit with a really nice, you know, part for the genitalia. So Elon Musk, when he goes up to Mars and shit, when he's up in Mars, he's gonna have on a Joyce thing. Or at least, you know, that he challenged Putin to a one-on-one fight. Did you know that? That
No,
I'd love to see. So I would like to make his robe, like, you know, and go out and fight the two idiots together. But, you know, and maybe back to a little, I'd like to do maybe a little writing for performance. I can't remember stuff you can see. So I'm not going to be able to stand up and do those hour monologues that I used to, but and I'm right here right now. One of the people that says Lorraine Whittlesey. Lorraine and I are a singing partnership, music partnership, and we're called Ebony and Irony. Get it? And because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to perform. So hopefully in the next couple of years, because it's going to take that long, we'll be able to maybe put together another show. See, I got lots of things to do.
Yeah. Well, you are incredibly inspiring.
Any more questions?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, Joyce, and just open it up to people so that they can ask you directly.
Okay.